Good afternoon, chairs and assemblymen and Senate members. And thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of New Economy Project, a New York City-based economic justice organization. Founded in 1995, New Economy Project works with community groups to fight systemic discrimination and to build a just economy rooted in cooperation, racial justice, and ecological sustainability. We co-founded and coordinate the New York City Community Land Initiative, an alliance that has fostered the growth of more than 20 community land trusts, which serve as vehicles to create and preserve permanently affordable housing and combat displacement. We urge the legislature to pass and fund the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or TOPA, at $250 million annually for the next 4 years. I've written detailed testimony, but I want to underscore 3 points. First, TOPA is a powerful and proven tool to stabilize housing, empower tenants, and combat displacement. TOPA gives tenants a first opportunity to collectively buy their buildings when a landlord sells on their own or in partnership with a qualified community land trust or nonprofit housing developer. Similar opportunity to purchase policies have preserved tens of thousands of affordable units and shared equity cooperatives in Washington, D.C. since 1980, San Francisco since 2019, and other jurisdictions. New York's TOPA bill incorporates best practices and lessons learned from those and other programs. Second, robust funding is essential to TOPA's success. A $250 million annual appropriation will enable tenants and qualified nonprofits to seize purchase opportunities on fast-moving timelines. Funding will also support technical assistance to help tenants exercise their TOPA rights and convert buildings to resident control. Third, TOPA would bolster and multiply tenant purchases already on the rise. I've cited several examples in my written testimony in which tenant associations have partnered with community land trusts and other nonprofits to successfully purchase their buildings from neglectful landlords. Enactment of TOPA would create similar pathways for tenants statewide who too often face rent hikes and eviction threats when their buildings change hands. New York State is home to a robust and growing network of CLTs, nonprofit housing developers, and legal and technical assistance providers that support TOPA and are ready to partner to ensure its effective implementation. Finally, TOPA would go far to combating real estate speculation that is driving New York's affordability crisis. As you heard today, Governor Hochul's budget proposal calls for a 75-day waiting period before corporate buyers could purchase 1 and 2 single-family homes. But that proposal leaves millions of tenants in the crosshairs of predatory investors. Passing and funding TOPA will give tenants and nonprofits statewide a powerful tool to interrupt speculative building sales and bring housing into stable resident control. New York's affordability crisis demands bold investments that address root causes of housing insecurity and homelessness. We urge the legislature to pass and fund TOPA at $250 million in the budget. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. This $250 million, would that encompass the whole state or just only for New York City?
It would be for the whole state.
Okay, so have they figured out what allocation would be New York City or upstate for this $250 if apply for that?
We don't have an allocation based on state or upstate.
Okay. And do we have a centralized system on what buildings are being targeted for TOPA? How do you prioritize who would be, getting this funding if they go through all the regulatory hoops and have any idea on that?
Well, in order to apply for the funding, the tenants would then have to go through the TOPA process. And so that's a few steps ahead. So some tenants may not go through that. And so it's just hard to determine exactly what that number would be or to prioritize. It would just depend on the number of TOPA purchases itself. But we can think about that and get back to you.
Where do you get the money? Where do you get the numbers, $250 million?
It was based on property sales and costs throughout New York City. And it had some estimates based on upstate where there's less data and also New York City. And again, I'm happy to follow up with some details on that.
Because $250, I just don't want to be just a pie in the sky number. I mean, how do you base on how many potential property will be up within one calendar year or fiscal year, or to be multi-year funding on this? So, I don't. It's great to have homeownership, but $250 is a lot of money. So, and we want to make sure that we spend it wisely and also fairly all across the board. So, I hope there's a process on that.
Yes, and so the $250 million over 4 years, we anticipate it being up to thousands of units. And again, I'm happy to follow up with you with those numbers and data.
How long has the TOPA idea been around? I mean, we've talked about it for some years now. Maybe you could talk about the origin of it.
Yeah, it's been around, not just the idea, but it's been implemented in D.C. since 1980. and it's been successful. It's since 2006, it's created 16,000 units of affordable housing and hundreds of permanently affordable cooperatives as well.
Is there any reason to think this wouldn't be successful here?
With adequate funding, I don't think so. To the excess. In addition to the funding, I also just want to note that we have lessons learned that we've already incorporated in the bill. And like we said, we have qualified purchasers like community land trusts that are standing ready to work with tenants as well.
And do you think it would be, spread out among the boroughs, right?
Yes.
I mean, of opportunities throughout the city, for example.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I ask because I'm not so familiar with the modeling that people are using right now. My concern would be back in the 80s, the city of New York was allowing tenants to buy the buildings they were living in after they had been taken through tax liens. And how do I describe it? You would have tenants ending up taking buildings that were in horrendous condition because basically the landlords had sucked everything out of the building they could and then stopped paying their taxes and walked away, right? I made my money, I'm walking away. So then the city said, okay, tenants, you want to buy them? And tenants said, yes, please. Mm-hmm. And then tenants ended up with very difficult situations because they didn't necessarily understand how much infrastructure work was required and how their rent rolls weren't going to be enough to afford to take on the capitalization that was earned. I just don't want us to be walking ourselves down a path that ended up pretty sad. A lot of tenant ownership buildings back in the 80s. So I guess I would suggest we all review some of the reports that were written by advocacy groups at the time.
Well, I'll say that I think we're in really good hands with CLTs and some of the groups that really know what they're doing that have sprouted up since then. I think there's been a lot of research that you can speak to, but yeah, I know a lot about burning buildings in the Bronx and Uptown and in Hell's Kitchen. I think we've moved past that, but also we have groups that know what they're doing now.
And I'll just add that while a majority of the $250 million would go towards acquisition, amount of that money would also go towards technical assistance, both in the immediate and long term, to ensure the long-term success of those buildings. And just reiterating Jared's point about CLTs being ready to be that partner in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the three of you for your testimony. And I wish you all the luck in getting what you're trying to get, because homeownership is a great thing. This formally closes the 14th and final hearing of the legislature's public hearing series on the governor's 25-26 fiscal year budget. I want to thank everyone for their participation. I want to thank you for staying till the end. You are our closing act, and we appreciate your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Gary, it was a pleasure.
Well,